Hi,
Hello.
thanks for having me.
Well, my pleasure.
And I'm sorry I had to reschedule from yesterday.
No problem. Sorry, I was late this morning. All of a sudden, it wanted me to change my password and everything else.
No worries at all.
So, what's up?
Yeah, have you been following what's going on with Larry Wallach on Long Island?
Well, I read your update on it, which was absolutely remarkable. I mean, that was like the best update ever on Larry Wallach, I think.
Well, I even have a better update this morning. One of my board members is a federal prosecutor, and she just fired off a letter to the town attorney, urging them to bring Wallach back to court for contempt. We cited quite a bit of evidence showing that he's still illegally harboring the slots at the location where he's not allowed to have them, as well as exhibiting them to people within town of Islip in violation of the court order.
Oh, I love that. Love that. I really hope they do. It's so hard to get the judges to do anything about these people, even after they're found in contempt. So I really wish you the best on that.
Thank you. Yeah, we've had more than 30 media articles now on it. So we're exposing him quite a bit to the public. We've been filing complaints with the USDA, with the town, and we'll be back in Supreme Court October 6th to see what the judge says. But we're hoping maybe they'll bring him to court sooner to file these contempt proceedings.
Oh, that would be wonderful. And he's one of those characters that has just been flying under the radar because there were so many other bad guys out there that had so many more big cats. I mean, I've never been involved in sloths, so I don't know anything about that industry.
Mhm.
But now that all of the big guys are either in jail or facing jail, these littler guys are coming up higher onto everybody's radar, and I'm glad to see that happening.
Yeah, I mean, and it helps us that he's a wannabe Joe Exotic. I mean, he wants that attention. So he's posts all this crazy stuff on social media, and it just makes great fodder to send to the attorneys and to show to the judge. So I mean, he's digging his own grave here. And I think you're right. I think he's been violating laws for like 40 years now. But nothing happened. But now we're seeing all his buddies go to prison, and we hope that he's next. I mean, our goal was by September to shut down his isolate business and to see him his license revoked by the end of the year. So we're on track for that.
One of the things I was thinking about this interview yesterday, and it's like if he were to walk into a park with children wearing a trench coat and be like, "Hey kids, you want to pet my sloth?" Mothers would be like, and fathers would just be all up in arms. They'd want this guy behind bars. And yet, because he can put it right out there in the public, come pet these sloths and painting it all over the outsides of the building, people see that and they can't believe that there would be anything wrong with it. And so I think the people that are being duped into paying to participate in these types of operations it's really sad that they're being taken advantage of because they love animals. They think what they're doing is a good thing, and they only find out after their person ends up in jail that it was not a good thing.
Yeah, we've heard from a number of people who went there and were just horrified, but they saw. We had a wildlife rehabilitator who lives in the area, who just popped in before, they really got off the ground to see what was going on. And before she even knew what happened, Larry had put a baby sloth in a sling around her neck, and without even telling her what he was doing. So she was horrified. She's spoken out against it. We were contacted by a father of a child who was bitten there. And they've been very reluctant to go forward to a lot of it. They did talk to the USDA, but we wanted them to speak to the media and really get the story out. But they were scared to do it. I mean, if you look up Larry and you look up the people that he's involved with, I mean, these are bad people. And I think that if parents knew that ahead of time, they wouldn't be bringing their kids around him.
And I think there's also you have that added problem of people wanting, after their child's been bitten, then whose fault was that? It was yours for taking the kid
Uh-huh.
there, and they don't want to face that kind of public scrutiny.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Well, even his vet, I don't know, are you familiar with Dr. Camilo Sierra?
Mm-mm.
It's Wallach's vet. He's also a vet for the cruel horse-drawn carriage industry, for the horse racing industry. I mean, he's had his license twice suspended by the New York State Gaming Commission for fraud, for corruption, and for drugging racehorses. He's also recently just completed a 2-year suspended stay on his license for similar violations from the Board of Regents in New York State.
Goodness.
So yeah, I mean, everyone down to his vet is a shady, sordid character, and I mean, it's very concerning when this is the guy who's supposedly giving the health certificates for these animals. I mean, he's literally been he has a conviction on his record for falsifying health certificates. So I don't see how anyone bringing their children to Larry Wallach's sloth encounters would be comfortable doing that, knowing that this is the guy who's looking after the health of these animals.
Yeah, I think for the most part, people just don't know, and I'm glad you're getting so much press coverage. I'm shocked to hear you said 23 articles. Is that
Oh, more than 30 now. More
wow,
than 30. Yeah, and a lot of major ones, ABC, NBC, CBS. Um, actually, we expect him to be on Inside Edition next week.
wonderful. Oh my gosh. Well,
Yeah.
that makes such a huge difference because you can reach so many more people than you can through a court proceeding. Those court proceedings are very important and they
Mhm.
give you the basis for getting the media, but man, getting the public educated has been such a challenge.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we want to get a ban on these acts in all of Suffolk County. I mean, we're looking to ban all wild and traveling animal acts, as well as these close encounters, regardless of whether they're traveling or brick and mortar facility. And then we're looking at New York State too to ban the traveling animal acts. I think trying to get the close encounters at the brick and mortar facilities might be too ambitious for the state at the time, but I don't think it's too ambitious for Long Island. So we're working on both those fronts to get some legislation. So even when we get his license revoked, there can't be another Larry Wallach or Joe Exotic around the corner.
Well, that's great.
Yeah, yeah, we've already got a bunch of support from Suffolk County legislators for this. And then we also just met with a sponsor for New York State legislation. Originally, it was a ban on a proposed ban on wild animals in circuses in New York State, but the public now knows for the most part not to go to the circus. I mean, they want to go see talented human performers who can go home at the end of the day, retire when they wish. They don't want to see elephants and tigers beaten for entertainment. But I feel like there's a lot of these people like Larry Wallach, the smaller guys, who aren't the ringlings of the world, that people don't know about. So we want to make sure that people aren't going to go to their county fair and be surprised to see Larry Wallach with a sloth. So we're working very hard to uh, to get both of these laws passed so that people on Long Island, people in New York State, are safer from these people and the animals are better cared for.
And have you had any success whatsoever with USDA enforcing their meager Animal Welfare Act?
We've been making complaints, so we will see. I know that things move slow at that level, but we're hoping. I mean, like I said, we're on track. We said September we'll get him shut down, and December we're hoping his license will be revoked. So we'll see at the end of the year whether you know significant action has been taken, but he's obviously violating a ton of codes, a ton of USDA, Animal Welfare Act violations. I mean, he's just even some of the pictures that I sent showing to the town attorney showing that the animals are still at the same location. I mean, he has slots literally hanging from the hinges of door frames. Someone closes the door, it breaks the slot's arms. I mean, that's a clear violation of the Animal Welfare Act, putting him in such an unsafe position right there. And I mean, I'm even skeptical. They make it seem like in the video, like the slots are doing that on their own. I'm very skeptical of that. I think Larry's putting them up there for a photo op, just like he before the first video I think he posted was actually of one of the sloths on a clothing rack outside of his store on next to a Carvel. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous the things that he posts and think are okay and think that the public would be okay with.
Wow.
I mean, he's really his own worst enemy, as
Well,
many of these
most of
guys
these
are.
guys are.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's crazy. he he has I was just at like a wildlife rehabilitator get together, and you know, a lot of them know and dislike Larry, and one of them was telling them that Larry used to brag that he's friends with Joe Exotic, and who knows if that's even true because he's such a liar. But I know he's tied to Doc Antle. I know he's tied to all these other big terrible guys. But the fact that he thinks in this day and age that's something to brag about is just again digging his own grave.
It makes me wonder if it's part of the bigger issue where we, through social media now, have these silos of information where we think we only follow the people that agree with us. And so people who are of his mindset are only seeing that mindset out there and think that that is just perfectly fine. Um, it,
Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. I mean, that's why I'm not that big on social media. I mean, it's important. I should be bigger on it, but I'm much bigger on the traditional media because I know we're going to reach a wider audience. It's not just like if I post something on my social media, I mean, we still have say, you know, 30, 40,000 followers or something like that, but it's 40,000 followers who agree with me already. You know, it's preaching to the choir. Whereas if I get something on traditional media, we get it on the on television or in Newsday, we know we're getting a wide variety of people who don't necessarily agree with us and need that message, you know, so they
yeah.
can agree with us. I think knowledge is power. And once these people, you know, I think the facts are very, very clear. So if someone's on Larry Wallach's side, I mean, either they're a sociopath like him or they simply just don't have the right facts.
They need better friends.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
When just recently, because of the Big Cat Public Safety Act, we've been trying to get this one last senator to lift their hold. And part of what we've been doing is talking to different sheriffs about, you know, what's it like in your state? So where a Republican might be saying, well, our state has a ban against this, so we really don't need a federal ban. And when we talk to the sheriffs are like, well, even though there may be bans against it, that we have no recourse. And we, for
Mhm.
years, one guy said for 9 years, I was trying to get USDA to come out and do something about all this abuse that I was seeing, and they just did nothing. And so that's why I ask you whether or not USDA was taking any action, because it's been interesting. I've never talked to sheriffs before. I never had any reason to. And now it's like hearing all of these sheriffs going, where is the federal government in this? So
Yeah.
I'm hoping that by more people like you pressing these situations and just constantly being that squeaky wheel, that maybe they will start to do their jobs better.
Well, I hit send on another USTA complaint 10 minutes before this call. So they're hearing from us. I mean, Larry, he was violating town ordinances in Nassau County. Now he's in Suffolk County, but right next door in Nassau County, he was violating Hempstead ordinance there for almost 40 years. And I mean, I know he's due in court for stuff related to his now foreclosed property in Nassau County. I think October 27th, he's doing criminal court for something related to his property. He's getting arraigned, so we'll find out what it is. In October 26th, he's doing court back for the slots in addition to the October 6th. So he's his October is full of court dates. But I mean, Hempstead was citing him for 40 years with again no real recourse. I mean, he was continuing to keep tigers, you know, in a makeshift enclosure below his, you know, below his deck next to his pool. I mean, there's videos of him and Ron Jeremy, who's now indicted on 30 counts of rape, eh, making a poodle and a baby tiger, you know, play fight with each other. Um, as they just enjoy the pool. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, but even his pool wasn't legal, so he doesn't do anything by the code. He doesn't do anything right. But you're right, there's no recourse. So I mean, he got away with this for 40 years. And I think you were talking about him bringing slots to a park. I mean, he's brought tigers to parks before. Um, I know that at one point he had brought tigers to a park down the block from his home. And then when the police arrived due to complaints from the parks department, he just flashed them his USDA federal exhibitor's license, and they went, "Oh, okay. I don't know anything about this, so you're free to go." I mean, they had him dead to rights right there. He could have been arrested for endangering the public. but he got away with it, as he's been getting away with things. But he's never run up against us before, and we're not going to let him get away with this stuff any longer.
And how long have you been after him?
I mean, we've only really started this campaign, I think, in mid end of July.
Oh my
So
gosh.
yeah, so we've had monumental progress since then. We've got more than 30 stories. We've been every major news station besides Pix 11. So Pix 11, if you watch this, get us on there. And probably half a dozen stories in Newsday. And we've got him cited for violations of the county permit, um, several violations of town permit requirements. He's due for in court for 4 of those on the 26th. He has again, we have that restraining order that was just granted, shutting down his business last week. But again, he's not paying attention to that restraining order. He's lying to the press. Even he's telling them that the slots are no longer at the hot dog location, and the same day he posts a video that shows the slots in the hot dog location. He tells them that he's allowed to exhibit these animals in town of Islip, because he has a federal license, but your federal license doesn't supersede the local laws and ordinances. So he's operating in violation of that court order.
Wow. Wow. Do you know where he gets his animals from?
I've heard that he got the slots from somewhere in Tennessee, or most of them. I think he has 7 slots at this point, and one of them is even pregnant. Um, Supposedly, most of them came from some place in Tennessee where they were captive bred. Who knows if that's true anyway? And I mean, even if they were captive bred, it makes no difference to these animals who were bred into a lifetime of confinement and exploitation by people like Larry. Um, but he also says on his website that one of the sloths was rescued from the wild. So what does that even mean? So I had one of his employees, Ashley Herkimer, who's pretty much his most upfront employee. If you look at his social media, she's recording everything, she's talking. She actually messaged me on Facebook a few weeks ago and strangely reported to me another bite that I didn't know about. I mean, we've heard about 5 bites now, and this was the 5th one she reported. So I don't know if she was just mad at Larry that day or what was going on, but she decided to message us about that. And she's since now defended Larry a million times. So I don't know what that was about, but she contacted us and told us about this additional bite. Um and I don't know, what was your question? I was going somewhere
Well, I
with
was
that.
asking where they come from, but you
Oh
said
yes.
that one came from the wild.
Yes. So I asked her, what does this mean? He says he rescued one from the wild. And she said that there was a place, that she didn't know where, but she said that law enforcement confiscated one from someone who who had illegally taken one from the wild and was harboring them illegally. So they took possession and then gave him to Larry Wallach. I mean, again, who knows if that's true? Larry is just such a narcissist. He makes things up all the time. But if it is true, I mean, again, it just shows that law enforcement shouldn't be the ones making these decisions. Your local law enforcement, we're lucky if they know the laws pertaining to dogs and cats. I mean, they don't know anything about sloths or tigers.
And would there be a requirement by the state of New York?
Hmm.
Would there be a requirement by the state of New York that there be a health certificate for that animal coming into the state if it came in?
Yes, there would be. So yeah, so that's on one of our one of the list of things to FOIA, to try to get. But so far we haven't received that. Received a lots and lots of documentation, but we're still waiting on health certificates.
Good luck.
Yeah.
And I think probably in most of these cases, they don't get the health certificates because the animals are small enough. Even the tigers, when they get rid of them, are small enough that they're transporting them in cars, not in semi-tractor trailers.
Yep. Yeah, well, I mean, we already have it documented that his vet falsifies health certificates. What's to what's to say he's not doing the same here? As far as falsifying paperwork goes, I've heard from Larry's, literally his family members, his former friends, his former business partners, even other characters that you and I would not approve of, that just say, "Hey, Larry's too shady. I mean, I may not do everything right with animals, but this is too much even for me." So, so we've heard from all these characters, and one is actually I would want him to say he's a bad character, but one of the most vocal voices that we've heard from was a guy by the name of Bobby Zigman, who's a former best friend to Larry Wallach. He's actually in a relationship with Larry's ex-wife now, and he's custody of the kids. I mean, he's very, very close to this whole situation. And he told me that he's witnessed Larry falsifying paperwork. So yeah.
As long as they get away with it, I think they feel emboldened to continue to do it to a even more um, dangerous degree, because what if they've never been caught, they feel like they're never going to get caught, I think. In fact, one of the things that Joe Exotic was so angry about in court was he was like, "I've been doing this for years, so and everybody does this, so why are you holding it against me?" And it's like, "'Cause it's
Uh-huh.
against the law."
Well, that is exactly what Larry's lawyer's only case was at the recent court hearing when he was opposing the temporary restraining order. He basically said, "Yes, my client is violating the law, but there's lots of other people violating the law. So why are we penalizing my client?" I mean, that didn't go very far,
It never
but
worked with your mom. What made you think it'd work in court?
yeah. Oh, and his other claim that he tried to make
Really,
was
you wanna see the kitty?
yeah. This is Saul.
Aw.
But so really there were two arguments that were made. One was that everyone else is violating the law, so why am I getting penalized? I mean, I don't know anyone else illegally harboring slots and ice lips, so even that didn't make any sense. His other claim was that slots are not wild animals. Which was, yeah, I mean, it was great. A lot of the media actually juxtaposed that quote with me saying that, if his argument is that sloths are not wild animals, he's already lost. I mean, it's just ridiculous, but it really just shows um, how they really have no argument. I mean, that they're just grasping for straws.
Right. Have you gone after other people like him before?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. A few years ago, I think 2019. Are you familiar with Vince Covino and Sequest?
No.
Sequest is another sordid, close encounters type thing. They're aquarium based, but depending on their locations, they have, capybaras and, pretty much makeshift aquariums inside malls. Whatever animals they can get in that state, they're just sticking them in a mall and charging people money to come in and pet them. So they tried to move out to Long Island in 2019, and we actually locked them out. We had about a 10-month campaign, and we just made their life so difficult that they threw up their hands and withdrew their application. Shortly thereafter, they also got locked out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Um, so, I know PETA is following them wherever they go. And I am at the disposal of anyone at any of these locations. I mean, I was just talking to someone in New no, what is it? Woodbridge, New Jersey, where there's a one of the Cofino aquariums just yesterday, and they were saying, what can I do to stop this? So I think that wherever these people are popping up, there's opposition, just not necessarily opposition that is experienced with strategic campaigning. But that's why I encourage people, if there's a Sequest in your area, if there's a circus coming to your area, contact us at humanelongisland.org, or contact PETA, or contact Big Cat Rescue. I mean, we're all willing to help, and we all have the knowledge and the know-how to do this. And I think that's what a lot of people are lacking. I think a lot of people care, but they just don't know where to start.
Yeah, I've over 30 years, what I have found most frustrating is it seems like there are so many people who love wild animals and want to protect them, and yet getting them to step over that threshold and actually take some kind of political action has been so freaking difficult. And,
Yeah.
you might be able to get them to sign a petition or an email, but to get them to just call their member of Congress has been like pulling teeth. And they
Yeah.
don't understand that signing a petition is really not effective.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough. I mean, we kind of like we were founded as a circus protesting organization, protesting Ringling Brothers Circus and protesting Cole Brothers Circus. I mean, to date, my proudest victory is still killing Cole Brothers Circus. I mean, they used to come to Long Island because they thought this was, the big money season for them. And then they started coming less and less after we just started destroying their attendance. I mean, when we first started protesting, they would have blocks and blocks of worth of parking, and people would be parking across the street, blocks and blocks, and walking. But it gave us a great opportunity to just reach those people before they got to the tents. I mean, when we were protesting Ringling, everyone bought their tickets online. They had to drive through the gates. We had very little direct interaction other than on megaphones. Um, but with the smaller circuses like Cole Brothers Circus, Garden Brothers Circus, we could actually reach people before they made their tickets in most cases. And we saw a lot of people who learned about Cole Brothers violating Endangered Species Act, legally selling endangered elephants and beating elephants with bull hooks. Literally, we the last season we actually set up a 50-inch television screen showing video of Tim Frisco beating the elephants.
Mm.
And when people saw that, they said, "Hey, I'm going to go do something else with my day." So, I mean, so we devastated their attendance, and then in 2015, we actually convinced the town of Islip, where sloth encounters decided to set up shop. We convinced them not to give permits for Cole Brothers to come back. And then that went viral on the Associated Press. Someone in New Jersey reached out to us and said, "Hey, how'd you do that? I want to do that in my community." And you're right, 99% of the people who contact me, I tell them what to do, and they never follow through because they think it's going to be too difficult, They just want to sign that petition and move on with their day. But this woman, she was amazing. Joan Kahn in West Deptford, New Jersey. She followed everything I said to a T, and she got them canceled in West Deptford, New Jersey, just about a month after we got them canceled in Islip. And between the two cancellations, they went bankrupt. They ended up getting sued by American Express because they couldn't pay their bills. And I mean, they ceased to exist. I think they tried a comeback tour where they put up a GoFundMe and they were like, "We need $300,000 to go back on the road." They got like $3,000. I mean, people don't want to support these outfits anymore.
Man, that does show you though that just one person really can make a difference. And so thank God for those one percenters out there that are willing to make a
Absolutely.
difference and save so many animals from so much suffering.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy to me that Wallach, I mean, just shows, how big of an ego he has, and how he thinks he can just blatantly get away with these things. I mean, Islip of all places where he set this up. I mean, first of all, they have a a ban on wild animal possession within the township. Second of all, we killed Cole Brothers Circus starting there. We stopped a slaughterhouse that tried to move there in 2019. The same year we kept um the Covino brothers off of Long Island. We stopped the slaughterhouse from opening in Islip. Just last year we exposed the Islip School District for rounding up geese. They were killed apparently 200 geese a year for about 8 years before someone came forward and blew the whistle on it. And within a week, we got a commitment from them to never do it again. I mean, so we have a very good track record in Islip. I mean, all of Long Island, but I feel like Islip in particular in recent years. So Larry did not do his research, just like the Covino brothers did not do their research before they tried to move out here.
Dang. Well, October is going to be a really busy month for animal exploiters because I think Doc Antle and the guy from, what was his name? I want to say White, but it wasn't White. He was in Virginia. He was the one that actually ended up being his text messages were what implicated Antle in that whole thing in Virginia. And so a lot of those have hearings that are coming up in the month of October.
Okay. Yeah, hopefully it's a good month for big cats and for for sloths all around.
There's a meme in there somewhere.
Yep, yep.
From the fastest to the slowest or something.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I don't know how the sloth thing ever took off. I mean, was that something that was done in third world countries that ended up being picked up and brought here, or do you know anything about the origins of that?
I don't. I don't know about the origins. I know about the origins by why Larry's doing it now though. Larry's apparently he's in a fight with the DEC because the DEC failed to renew his dangerous animals permit in New York State this year. So he can no longer exhibit tigers or lions or bears or alligators like he used to. Sloths, unfortunately, are not categorized in New York State as dangerous animals. They are in other states, but it's a loophole in New York State law. I mean, I think again that's why we need federal protections for these animals. We can't expect the state or the county or the towns to think of everything from sloths to tigers. I mean, the USDA should be doing that, and our federal government should be doing that.
I've seen a couple of states that have come up with language that I think is just genius. Instead of trying to name every exotic animal in the world, because you're never going to name all of them. In fact, the what was it? The pouched Gambian rat was such a huge popular pet back in the 90s. And now they're attributing a lot of the monkeypox that are happening here in the US to people that had purchased these animals as pets. But instead of trying to determine, there's a ban against all of these other animals, what they're doing is saying if it's not a dog or a cat or a hamster or a gerbil or a goldfish, then
Mhm.
it's an exotic animal. And I think that's the only way you can address it.
Yeah, no, I think you're 100% right. Yeah, I mean, animals aren't ours to own, to possess, to exploit. So, I mean, if we should be, I think people should be expressly asking permission if you can have an animal. I mean, you guys are GFAS accredited. You guys have proven that you know what you're doing with big cats. So, I mean, I think that's the way it has to go. I mean, I think that people need to prove that there's a reason for these animals. They can't be released to the wild for some reason, and I have the expertise to actually properly care for them. But I feel like it's backwards. I mean, I feel like anyone can apply for these permits and get them, and then you have to prove that they shouldn't have ever gotten them before. And it's so hard to get a USDA license revoked. It's so hard to get the federal government to move on these things. We shouldn't just be rubber stamping all these permits. I mean, that's what happened in even the county. We found that Larry Wallach was operating without a county petting zoo permit, and even that was just rubber stamps. He got the permit the same day that he was found to be violating it for months and months and months. And I think if I remember correctly, it was a $500 a day fine for violation of the permit, and he had been violating it for like 3 months, but it capped at $2,000. So, and he's selling, uh, year long experiences, like a yearly membership to his sloth encounters is $1,100. So, he just sells two of those, and he already paid for the fine plus the application fee.
They do just consider it the cost of doing business, I think, whenever they run up against any kind of pushback from the government.
Yeah, yeah, Larry, he keeps telling me, I mean, because I see him, I'll go to his sloth encounter to do interviews, and he'll come on out, and we'll talk. It's funny. When I started the campaign, he actually called me up on the phone posing as Newsday, saying that he wanted to send me a citation, so he wanted to get my home address, and I was like, he has this very distinct gravelly voice, so I was like, this isn't Newsday. Is this Larry? And he responds, "You effing dweeb, I'm coming to get you." And then I meet him in person, and he's this like, he's just this cowardly man, totally non-confrontational, nervous laughter. I mean, nothing like he is on the phone when he's threatening people. Um, but I mean, I'll see him there, and he'll tell me like, we'll have a nice conversation, and then as I'm driving off, he has to try to get the last word in. He'll yell something like, "Oh, my lawyer, I have deeper pockets than you. My lawyers will make this all go away." Like it's crazy. But he comes from, I don't know if you know his past. He comes from big money. His dad was founded Robert Plan Corp Insurance on Long Island. And at one point, they were pulling $700 million a year in revenue. So he comes from that type of money. And I feel like he's never had to have a real job. Daddy just bought him his tigers. And when he'd get in trouble, Daddy would pay for the lawyers and make his problems go away. But Daddy isn't around anymore, and Larry and his brother have bankrupted this $700 million a year company. I mean, I don't know how you do that, but you do that if your name is Larry Wallach. So he doesn't have deep pockets anymore. I mean, he's literally living out of a hotel in Rockville Center and supposedly the slopping counter. So but he's still trying to act like he has this billion dollars in cash just lying around, but he doesn't. So again, I mean, his time is up.
Mm. Well, it's about time. I didn't realize he dated back so far. When you said he was friends with Sam Mazzola, it's like this guy must have been around since the 80s then.
Yeah. Yeah, we actually got one of the calls I got was from a woman named Denise Flores, who used to work with Larry, and she worked for Sam Mazzola. And I mean, for people who don't know Sam Mazzola, he was a bear exhibitor basically in Ohio, who had his license revoked in 2009. In 2010, one of his bears killed a caretaker. I mean, again, it just shows how weak the federal government is on these issues that they let him keep his bears after revoking his license. So, and then in 2011, I believe, he was found dead from asphyxiated and chained to his bed. He asphyxiated on a sex toy in a sex act with a 17-year-old kid. So another very bad man who had very close ties with Larry Wallach. They actually opened a very Covino-esque type mole encounter, Animal Zone in Ohio. And Denise Flores worked for them at the time. And she said she actually caught Larry drugging the baby tigers and baby lions for petting encounters.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Man, what changes we've seen over the past 30 years. Man. And at the time it just and you may have been doing this longer than us. I don't know. We started in 1992, but at the time it was like there's just so much evil going on out there. I don't know how we're ever going to make a dent in it. And by 2016, we were seeing the fur industry was complete. Well, it was by 2018, it was completely dead. 2016, you started to see some changes and seeing the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service revoke the generic tiger loophole, and so they couldn't easily breed and sell these cats across state lines legally anymore. And so many things like the big circus closing
Yeah.
down operations. So I feel like we can see the light at the end of the tunnel, and it's just a matter of flushing out the last of the rats that were in there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, change happens so quickly. I mean, when you think about all the work you have to get done to make this stuff happen, I mean, it's monumental. It seems very, intimidating. But if you just put your head down and do it, I mean, change happens so quick. I mean, when I got into this field, when I was in college, I said I want to work for an animal rights organization and see the end of Ringling Brothers Circus before I die. When I was 29 years old, I was leading, I was as head of PETA's Animals Entertainment Department, and I was leading the last ever Ringling Brothers Circus right here on Long Island, which is really full circle because the first circus protest I ever attended was Ringling Brothers at Nassau Coliseum, and that was their last ever venue. So I got to see them off where my story started with this stuff.
Oh man, that had to feel good.
Yeah, yeah, and that was before I was 29. I think I was 29 years old when that happened. That was my life goal. Before I was 30, life goal complete. Everything else is a bonus, So yeah.
Oh gosh. Well, I hope you will keep me posted on what happens with Larry. I'm very interested in hearing more, and let me know if there's anything we can do to help you.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate your time today, and thank you for everything you do for the big cats.
Bye bye.
Bye.